my lazy teenage boasts are now high-precision ghosts, and they're coming round the track to haunt me. When she looks at me and laughs, I remind her of the facts. I'm the king of rock and roll completely. Happy 60th birthday to Paddy McAloon of Prefab Sprout, a band from the 80s many of you will probably never have heard of, but who I really like. But I just thought I'd give him a little tribute. We have no kings of rock and roll today, but we do have 10 Famelabulous Famelabbers, 10 kings and queens from 4 continents, all hoping to book a place in tomorrow's final. So I'm Quentin Cooper, tweeting as @QWERTY, and I am your genial host, and I hope you realize this is Famelab International Tremi Final 2, which makes this a double helix, since we're in the Helix Theatre. Who was here at the first Tremi Final at the ungodly hour of 10 a.m.? Oh, well done, you brave people. Rest of the audience, give them an applause for hardiness. Okay, now who wasn't but is a Famelab regular and aficionado in the know and kind of generally knows what's going on here? Just the one of you. I know there's a little smattering. Okay, and finally and most crucially, who is here by chance, by curiosity, by cost-cutting cheapskatedness, just because it's a free event, and has really, thank you for admitting to that, and has very little idea what this is all about. Great, well, you are especially welcome. Thank you for joining our science communication congregation. So it's very simple. Tomorrow is election day. I usually do this bit without a musical accompaniment, but if you insist, right, okay. Today is election day. Sorry, tomorrow is election day. Today is selection day. Famelab International is the world's largest and one of its top 10 best hosted science communication competitions. It's been going 10 years. Tens of thousands have taken part. Tens of millions have watched online or live. NASA and CERN have had versions. This year we've got 31 multi-talented, multi-regional, multinational Famelab winners around the world, and you can't simply squeeze them all into one event. So we have to have 3 Tremi finals. 3 people will go through from each to the final, which is tomorrow, where they, by the way, will have to do a completely different presentation as well. But each of them has come a long way. They've won through heats and auditions in their own, and finals in their own country, and each will have just 3 minutes to talk about some aspect of science and technology. No PowerPoint, no props beside what they can carry on themselves, and no nonsense. They're not allowed errors of fact, failures of logic, waffle. They will be rooted out by our 3-headed panel of judges as well. The goal is to get across scientific findings and thinking to anyone, not just to fellow scientists, so they have to entertain as well as explain, to give a sense of the magnificence as well as the significance of science, the wow as well as the how. They have to scintillate as well as stimulate. I can do this all day. Right, and they all, and this is the mean part, they have to do it in English, regardless of what their mother tongue is. And some of them will be working in their second language, some in their third, and 1 or 2 actually in their first language as well. But this is not an English-speaking competition, so that is something that has to be factored in as well. I think that's pretty much all you need to know to get us started. There's slightly more to it, and the actual offside rule in Famelab is really quite complicated, but I think you'll pick it up as we go along. Now, as I say, 31, 10 in each of the first 2, 11 in the next one, 10 coming. All the key decisions you can relax about because it's down to our judges. There's no audience vote this time, so save your big voting skills for tomorrow. The Brits here who actually get to vote, it could be kind of important out there. So let's meet our 3 judges who'll decide on their fate. So please welcome to the Helix stage, physicist with flourish, oceanographer with hidden depths, broadcaster with broad appeal, and PhD in experimental explosive physics, Helen Chersky. Some call him the Rock Doctor, some call him the Pompadour of Love. The first ever winner of the first ever Famelab Science Showman Spectacular, Mark Looney. Always prepared to do the unexpected and come on from the wrong side. That's great as well. And if Famelab has an avatar, an embodiment, an eminent entity without whom it would not be a worldwide phenomenon it is today, then that person is unquestionably the director of British Council Bulgaria, translator of many plays, and collector of many, many fridge magnets, this I did not know, Lubov Kostova. So Mark, Prefab Sprout fan?
Albuquerque.
Yeah.
I remember
hot
that
dog,
song.
something,
Jumping
Albuquerque.
Frog.
Jumping Frog,
Perhaps,
Albuquerque,
got
but
that.
perhaps not the time for this, okay? More relevantly, choosing just 30% of these 10 people is going to be tricky. How on earth are you going to go about this impossible task?
I can never tell you what I'm looking for. I just kind of know it when I see it. It might
You
be a
must be
nice.
terrible at a supermarket.
I know. It might be a nice little story. It might be a nice little trick. It might be something really interesting. I can never really tell you what I'm really after until I actually see it.
Okay. Lubov, how many fridge magnets?
Over 220. Last time I counted. I actually have to go for a new fridge soon.
Right.
But material scientists have told me there's a new paint that is actually metal-based, so I might be painting my walls as
Okay,
well.
and just very briefly, why?
They're kitschy, they're cute, they remind me of places, or are brought by people, very fond people, like Famelabers, for instance.
Yeah, and you got into trouble for collecting Famelabbers originally as well, so this works better. Now, more seriously, what are the three key criteria on which you'll be making your decisions?
Oh, those
You
are
know
the
this better than
royal
most.
C.
Yeah.
The triple C, it seems 3 is the big magical number of Famelab. There's
3
content,
judges, 3
of
minutes,
course.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Content, it has to be absolutely scientifically true. It has to be fact. It has to be something each of us take away and learn. Then there's, of course, clarity. It's usually defined as the Lubov factor. If Lubov understands, anyone will. It's basically that way of explaining that will catch the media's attention as well. And, of course, charisma. Charisma, as Mark says, is that thing that you just know is there when you see it.
And Helen, of course, these are all champions. They've come a long way to be here. They've all succeeded. The other thing that's going to make the difference is going to be how they deal with your questions. So what will you be looking out for?
So I'm interested fundamentally in authenticity, right? I very much believe that these are ideas that you have inside you as a scientist, you take your perspective for granted, and then you have to share that with someone else. And it's about what's in here. It's about how you accurately, precisely convey this kind of complicated mix of ideas and pull out the one thing. That is the point. And that's a large part of this game. It's being able to prioritize ideas so that when you're asked a question, you understand your subject so well, you can pull out that idea that's both interesting and fun and absolutely relevant.
Tough to do in 2 minutes.
Well, the standards are high here, right? This is a global competition.
Correct answer. That's good so far. And Lubov, finally, some of these people have come 4,000 miles. I think one's come 11,000 miles. Is that something you factor in when you're making your decision?
Global science happens everywhere, near and far, and I think this is the most exciting thing. Actually, my pet dream is to see those people from 11,000 kilometers away miles.
Probably kilometers
the
is
ones
more correct, but it is 11,000 miles. Yeah.
wherever they come from, if they could make scientific research together over time, meet up, become friends, and become peers in science as well.
Yes, but to go back to my question, do you factor in how far they've come when you
No.
make... Good.
No.
That is the correct answer,
No.
I'm afraid. Near or far makes no difference. It's
That's
just
right.
what you see on the... Okay, this is not going to be easy. They had a very tough job in the first semi-final. They're going to have a very tough job now. Can we please give our judges some encouraging applause because they've really got a tough task ahead of them. So Tremi-Final 1 has already sent through in alphabetical order the champions from Hong Kong, India and Malta. But who from? Australia, the Czech Republic, Ireland, Italy, Korea, Mauritius, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Uganda and Vietnam is going to join them. Again, alphabetical order, no favourites. Now the actual order has been decided by a long game of musical chairs earlier today. And as a result, first up is Korea and their 2017 Famelab winner, Jung Hwan Mok. A PhD student in developmental genetics at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, Jung Hwan is a big believer in doing odd things. He says that as a kid, he enjoyed reading biographies and noticed that almost every great person did some uncommon and weird things during their childhood. So he tried some himself, including disassembling and reassembling a radio. I've managed half of that. Sowing seeds and trying to hatch an egg. Despite that, Jung Hwan says 20 years later, he's not yet a great person. But he believes that through talking about science, and as he puts it, inflaming the base passions for science, he can not only become great, but encourage others to become great as well. Which means we may feel, all of us, a bit better and a bit bigger after 3 minutes with our Korean champion, Jung Hwan Mok.
About half a year ago, I had this strong urge to have a pet chicken so that I could daily collect fresh organic eggs from it. Soon, I returned to my house from the supermarket nearby with fertilized eggs. But then, I noticed that I definitely need to maintain 37 degrees Celsius for the eggs to hatch. So I looked around my room, and I realized that assembling my overheating laptop adapter in the styrofoam box could be the perfect solution. So after that, I measured the temperature inside the styrofoam box, and I realized that 37C was maintained by overheating my adapter while I was enjoying my computer game. After 3 weeks of crazy gaming, I got a beautiful baby chick. Unfortunately, it was a rooster for no fresh eggs, but we are living happily together. Okay, looking at my rooster, a life was born in roughly designed incubator. So does this mean that his life was created roughly? No, actually, this event shows us that from the beginning of the fertilization, there has been a thorough plan for the chick's birth of life. Now, let's think about human case. The size of the human zygote cell is actually smaller than these particles. So this tiny cell becomes a human baby by replicating into 2 trillion cells. Most babies are born with all organs equipped at birth. So who created these organs? Did the fetus inside the mom declare, okay, this cell should be a muscle, maybe a tendon? No. The reality is that these cells inside the fetus were automatically forming into essential organs. So how does each cell know which organs they should become? The secret lies in their DNA. Let's imagine about a beautiful ballroom with 20,000 different lights. Depending on which lights are on or off, the atmosphere of that space will be very different. The same is true with cells. Each cell contains 20,000 genes, and depending on which genes are on or off, the cells become different organs. In this way, various tissues and organs are being formed in our bodies. The birth process of one creature from a single cell is called development, and I'm researching on this topic. By observing the principles of development, we gain knowledge and tools to fight against pain, such as genetic diseases or birth defects. Every time when I do this research, I always remind myself that these are the very thing that I have done. These are what I have experienced in my mother's womb, and I'm just trying to regain my lost memories. I want to remind all of you that one zygote cell has a thorough plan, and we, you and I, are the masterpiece of that grandeur plan. Thank you.
Jung Hwan, 안녕하십니까?
안녕하십니까?
So you've got a lovely story there. You've got an egg. You had a room full of lots of switches.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's quite ambitious to go from the switches to the actual organ or the organism, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Could you just kind of fill that in a little? I know you only had a couple of minutes, but these switches, when I switch some of these genetic switches on, what do they actually do in order to ultimately create the organ?
Yeah, actually, it's a very nice and interesting question because the development, there is a time plan. So when they are in a single cell, for example, A and B genes are turned on, it affects in a similar way, but when they are divided into 2 trillion cells after that, the interactions between A and B genes is totally different. So depending on the time period, the genetic interactions between genes are very different. So in that case,
and what does a gene actually do to make an organ? I understood there was kind of the RNA sequences. There's these. We're in the helix. Where does the helix come in here?
Okay, the DNA helix becomes an RNA, and it becomes a protein, and it works our body to form the organs, and combinations of the proteins makes it different. Okay.
Right, that's like the story of well. Thanks very much.
Brilliant job of trying to explain a lot of contemporary genetics in one last answer there. Can we please thank Jung Hwan Mok? Not easy going first, and remember he's come nearly 5,500 miles for 5 minutes on stage today, plus a possible appearance in the final tomorrow. Mark, are you going to be greeting all the Famelabers in their native language?
No, that's just the one. Just
the
that
one.
Okay,
fine.
maybe
Just
the Irish one.
Yeah, maybe the Irish one as well. All right, how's your Gaelic?
Oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah. Right, now next, just pipping Jung Hwan at a distance of 6,000 miles, one of the few Tremi finalists I've met before, because I hosted their final, and it's the first ever winner of Famelab Mauritius, Roshni Rajkumar. After a chemistry degree from the University of Mauritius, Roshni has somehow survived 10 years in one of the toughest jobs in the world, being a secondary school science teacher. It may or may not be coincidental, she's also done courses in self-defense and wrestling. Roshni is now a chemistry educator at the Adventist College in Mauritius and studying for a postgraduate certificate in education. She says she's passionate not only about science, but about transmitting that passion to the students. It clearly works, so for the next 3 minutes, consider yourselves all temporarily enrolled in the classroom of Roshni Rajkumar.
Imagine one of your loved and dear ones is lying on a hospital bed, fighting for his life. He has a life-threatening infection from which he is not recovering because none of the antibiotics has been given is working. That could be the story of any one of us here, because like most of you might already know, those entities that are very often responsible for our diseases, bacteria, have evolved and become more resistant even towards new generation antibiotics. So what could possibly save you or your loved ones from these multi-resistant bacteria? You are currently looking at one of the possible solutions. Not me. Light. Let me tell you how. Light is a form of energy that can be characterized by different wavelengths. Now we have these substances called photosensitizers, which if you happen to shine a light on them, they will absorb the energy and become activated. And they, in turn, will react with oxygen molecules, just like the one that you breathe, and cause these oxygen molecules to move to what we call an excited state. And this excited form of oxygen is so reactive that if it happens to be in the presence of a bacterial cell, it will simply kill it. Now, how do we go about it? Let us say you have an infection somewhere on your skin, or even inside your body. You take a little bit of the photosensitizer, you apply it, or you can even inject it or swallow it. Then you wait for a few minutes, because that is the amount of time that the bacteria are going to take to absorb the photosensitizer. And after a few minutes, you shine a light of a particular wavelength on it. Or if it is inside your body, you can direct it in there using optical fibers, that are materials that can carry light for a distance. And after a few minutes, your bacteria are dead. Now, some of you might be wondering, if this excited form of oxygen is so reactive, what would possibly stop it from killing the cells of your own bodies? Now, this is the interesting part. The structure of the bacterial cells are such that they will absorb the photosensitizer much more quickly than the cells of your own bodies. So when you have applied the photosensitizer and waited for a few minutes, the concentration of the sensitizer is highest in the bacterial cells, so the cells of your own bodies are spared. This extraordinary combination of light, a photosensitizer, and oxygen to cure diseases is what we call photodynamic therapy. Basically, minimal side effects, and most importantly, no bacterial resistance. Thank you.
So this is obviously one of the great stories of our time. What are we going to do after operations in the next few years as our current antimicrobials stop working? So what you've described sounds nice and simple. It's brilliant. You get a thing, you put it on, you shine some light, problem's gone away. Why isn't it happening right now in hospitals?
It is. Actually, photodynamic therapy, rather photochemotherapy, is already being used to treat cancer. So the research into photodynamic therapy to treat bacteria that has lagged behind because of antibiotics. So actually, the existence of this method has been around for about 100 years now. And it was only about in the 1970s that it started to develop for the treatment of cancer. But it's only during the past 10, 15 years that the interest has increased because of antibiotic resistance. So that is why it is now being looked into. Actually, it's already being used to treat some form of acne, which is caused by bacteria, and even gingivitis for dental use. So it is already being used. But it's only now that we're looking into the different possibilities of treating different kinds of bacteria, gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. So yes, it is already there.
And what are the downsides?
Okay, one of them would be when you have treated the person, he would be sensitive to light. So you would have to wait like for about 48 hours before you could go out into the sun.
Do you have to become a vampire?
Just for 48 hours, because after that, our system, it will remove the photosensitizer through the kidneys and all, and you'll be fine after that. And some of the patients who have already been treated through chemotherapy, one of the things they experience is a slight tinging effect, and that's about it.
Okay, one last question. I think Quentin's not stood up yet. So we have our own microbiome. We are covered in bacteria. We have more cells that aren't human and don't have all the human DNA. So what about those? What's this therapy going to do? You know, isn't it not going to kill me?
Yes, actually, one of the fields of research about that is to get it to target certain types of bacteria. So if, like for example, not all bacterial cells are similar in terms of the structure. So most of the research which is going on is to try to target the right bacteria using the right photosensitizer, using the right kind of wavelength for that to activate that kind of photosensitizer.
Brilliant illumination and inspiration from winner of the Mauritian competition, Roshni Rajkumar. Can't believe we're having a question from Lubov yet. You're being very taciturn by your standards. It's not so. So Jung Hwan may have come over 5,000 miles and Roshni over 6,000, but our next finalist has come further than them two put together, and then any other of our 31 Famelab Tremi finalists. This is the reigning Australian champion, Neural Chokchetin. Neural, great name for a scientist, is a postdoc researcher at the University of Technology in Sydney working in the field of melitology, aka looking at honey. She's investigated over 24 different Australian honeys, looking at particularly at their antimicrobial and prebiotic properties, rather than say how good it is on hot toast. Honey on hot toast. Now, the hope is to find new ways to combat multi-drug resistant superbugs and help all of us to be healthier. And she says 5 teaspoons of honey a day is all it takes to have a measurable benefit for our gut bacteria. Plus, it also tastes good on hot toast. Get ready to spread the love and the honey for our buzzy Aussie Famelab winner, Neural Chokchetin.
We all feel a little lonely every now and then. We just need to remember that we're never actually alone. We've got lots of friends involved in our lives very intimately. We just can't see them. Each of us has huge populations of bacteria living in every nook and cranny of our bodies. The largest population lives in our gut, and we call this our gut microbiome. Now, our gut population is estimated to be in the trillions. Together can weigh over a kilo and is about the size of our brain. It's pretty impressive for tiny critters that we can't even see. I study our microbiome using this artificial gut model that I built in the lab, replicating what happens from the mouth to the stomach, all the way down to the colon. Now, these gut bacteria down here, you've got both good and bad types. They play a huge role in our lives. They help us digest our food, they make essential vitamins, and they remove toxins. They influence our hormones, our immune system, and even the way our brains work. Today, we're very focused on creating and maintaining this healthy gut. Now, our microbiome can change as we get older, when we take antibiotics, and with what we eat. It thrives when we eat certain foods called prebiotics, like the complex sugars that are found in vegetables like chicory root, artichoke, garlic, and leek. So these feed not only us, but also our bacterial friends. Throughout history, honey has been a very popular home remedy for treating digestive problems. But is there any science behind this, and could it be linked to our microbiome? I've tested over 25 different Australian honeys in this system, And one of the reasons that I'm looking at honey is that it also contains these complex sugars that could be feeding these gut bacteria. So let's take a look on my PooTube channel to see these results. All of these honeys boost the numbers of the beneficial bacteria, which then made compounds that stopped the growth of the harmful ones. With honey in the system, even some of these harmful bacteria started doing good things instead, like making products that help to protect against colon cancer, the third most common cancer around the world. Now, the next step was to see if this translated in real life. So in a world-first clinical study, we had 50 volunteers eating honey while I looked at the changes in their microbiome. And amazingly, I did see significant benefits. Best of all, just 20 grams of honey a day was enough. My research has directly contributed to developing the first ever prebiotic honey, which is now registered as a therapeutic agent in Australia. A healthy gut can have huge health benefits because our microbiome is involved in a number of bowel diseases and can determine whether we get fat, develop cancer, or suffer from allergies or mental health issues. So a spoonful of honey to treat your microbiome, I guess you can say I've got a good gut feeling about this.
Neural, this is really interesting, especially since I've heard that cancer can be fed, cancer cells could be fed by sugar and honey as well. How does that work with the research that you're doing?
So a lot of the cancers from the colon actually start because the gut bacteria are exposed to a lot of fats and proteins. It's mainly the proteins when the process of them eating in the gut is called fermentation. So when they start fermenting these proteins, that's what causes the cancer-causing agents. When you actually switch them over to a sugar fermentation, they start producing these beneficial compounds called short-chain fatty acids. So one example is butyrate, and that's the one that has the colon cancer-fighting abilities. It also does a whole lot of other things. It's the preferred energy source for all the gut cells, the epithelial cells in the gut.
So you're basically saying that having toast with honey in the morning is actually going to help us all, even anywhere
The
around
honey
the world.
part definitely will. There are lots of fibers that you can have, so it depends on the type of bread that you eat as well, and the form that the sugars are delivered. So honey is actually mostly the simple sugars, fructose and glucose, but it's the complex sugars that make it down to the gut. So the fructose and glucose are often looked at as the bad type of sugars because they get absorbed and you get too much energy and that turns into fat. But the complex sugars, it's only a very small amount. They reach the gut. They're the ones that are doing all the good things.
Fascinating. And when is your treatment going to be available across the world then?
It's actually currently, they're trying to get it approved as a therapeutic agent in the EU and all over the world in Asia as well. So soon, I think you'll hear a lot about it soon.
And how much honey do you eat every day?
20 grams. Is that the right answer?
Not 21.
No, never.
Okay, and 2 minutes, not 2.5, so I have to leave it there. Time is honey for our Australian mammalian champion, Neural Chokchetin. We've got a brain's worth of gut bacteria. That is definitely a fact I will be using again. Now, Neural's into melitology. We're into meritocracy. So has she been good enough to make it to the final from this semi-final? Well, so far she has, because we've only had 3, but we've got another 7 to go who could ensure our honey researcher comes to a sticky end. Next, we continue one of the oldest and most respected traditions of Famelab by having our Swiss champion, who is not from Switzerland. For complex geopolitical, social, demographic, and laziness reasons, all or almost all of the finalists of Famelab Switzerland are invariably not from there. This year, I gave the masterclass, which is part of the prize if you make it to any Famelab final, and I can confirm there were 2 actual Swiss people in it, but I can also confirm that the winner was the Slovakian-born Katarina Sizarova. Katarina's first degree is in molecular biology, but she's now doing a PhD in bioinformatics at the University of Lausanne. She says she chose this particular field of research through elimination. Originally, she liked the idea of a career in medicine, but the first time she saw a needle stuck in someone's arm, she, quotes, almost suffered a bronchospasm. Then she decided on being a vet until she had to do artificial insemination of farm deer. Eventually, Katarina realized that, as she puts it, bioinformatics is the answer to life, the universe, and everything, because it enables her to do both biology and medicine without getting her hands dirty. And as a bonus, it leaves you with just enough free time to enter and win Famelab Switzerland. Sure to be a hit, it's our Swiss miss from Slovakia, Katerina Sizarova.
Among my 50,000 sisters, one of them was my favorite, my twin sister. We were born equal. We have the same DNA. But she was destined for royalty, longevity, admiration, all men falling at her feet. While me, I'm just a poor worker, one among thousands, not knowing what love is. This is not my story, but it is a sad reality of countless worker honeybees. A queen bee is 5 times bigger and lives 20 times longer than the worker. A queen bee lays 2,000 eggs per day while the workers are sterile, and yet they have the same DNA. The secret is the food that the bees receive when they are larvae. The future queen is given a substance called royal jelly, while the workers are given a mixture of pollen and honey. But how can food make such a difference? This book is the DNA of a honeybee. Printed sentences are the genes, telling me, the organism, what to do. But there are also these handwritten notes here and there telling me how often a sentence must be read. Some of these notes will force me to read a sentence over and over and over again, while others will make it illegible. In this way, the same instructions can lead to different results. These handwritten notes are in reality small chemical tags attached to the DNA. The scientists call them epigenetic marks. They can boost, but also completely turn off the effects of the genes. So the queen bee and the worker bee may have the exact same DNA sequences, but the chemical tags on their DNA are different. In the workers, they will silence the effects of the royalty-inducing genes, like those needed for making love and reproducing. How sad. And incredibly, it is the food, honey or royal jelly, that causes these different modifications to occur, leading to 2 different destinies. You and I, we are also influenced by epigenetics in response to what we eat, what we breathe, and even what we feel. Our biology may be very different to that of a bee, but at least in one thing, we are very much like them. We truly are what we eat. Thank you.
Katerina, yeah, thanks. It took me a few seconds to realise who you were talking about in the very first
And yet I was
sentence,
coming about the honey talk,
think
after
it's
the honey
we're getting a whole lot, aren't we? So you do link to the first talk as well about the molecular switches.
Yes.
How do these bees decide which of the workers to feed the jelly to? Is there any particular marker for that? Do you know?
And this is one thing which is really, we don't know this yet. And it will be actually very interesting to understand what is the, and also because they are fed with the royal jelly diet for 3 days, and then the workers switch, few of them, I mean, all the others, they are afterwards fed with the honey and pollen, and they keep only very few larvae fed with the royal jelly, but we don't know yet which are the larvae they choose and why.
Right, maybe there might be some little differences in the genetics, perhaps.
Actually, they may, because they may be sisters, but they may be also identical clones.
Yeah.
Depending on which was the drone.
And then looking at us, I mean, we all eat similar food, but then it's not just that food which causes this. Our own genes are different, which will react back to the switch. So it is quite a
it's amazing how the environment interacts. I think in human, the very nice example is the twins. I'm not sure if you know anyone knows here some identical twins. But in the course of life, as their environment differs, they differ. And sometimes if the environment is completely different, they may end up looking also quite different I mean, they shouldn't because they are twins, but they do. It's amazing.
Thanks very much.
It always reminds me of the bees and birds. So us humans are not like bees and birds when it comes to love, apparently, and it's all in the food.
No, it's not all in the food. It's the complex thing of the environment and the genes.
That would be very easy. Yeah.
I think when we come to teaching children the birds and the bees, we don't need to go into this level of detail. The bee's knees, not the Swiss cheese, or Slovakian Switzerland champion, Katerina Sizarova. And in case you're thinking, hang on, we just had a presentation about honey, and then we had one about bees. It is completely random. If you've got 31 Famelabers, you will spot these patterns out there as well. And as Mark said, also linked to the first presentation. Now, Katerina came a mere 540 miles to be here, but our next Famelabber is way less than that, at under 200 miles, which makes her the closest thing we've got to a local in this Tremi final. Deirdre Robertson is the 2017 Famelab Ireland winner. She's a psychologist working at the Economic and Social Research Institute of Ireland, attempting to apply behavioural insights into policy and particularly in the area of health. She's especially interested in the many, often unconscious ways that our minds affect our bodies and in the consequences for our physical and mental well-being, especially when we're getting older. Now, in her winning talk in Ireland, Deirdre started by talking about hurling, which over there is a sport, but over here means throwing up. So if she brings it up in a presentation, well, perhaps brings it up is the wrong word, at least you're ready. So some evangelical festival helical applause, please, for our Famelab Ireland champion, Deirdre Robertson.
Okay, so I won't be jogging out on centre court with the Williams sisters anytime soon. To be perfectly honest, if you'd asked me who was the star of Wimbledon last year, I'd probably have said it was Pippa Middleton's outfit. But what I can tell you is how understanding my dodgy tennis skills can help us to develop treatments for some of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. First, imagine this. You're standing at your front door ready to go in when suddenly you can't move. Your feet feel glued to the floor. Freezing is one of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. It can happen without warning, and we didn't know why or how to fix it until psychologists came up with a fascinating way to unfreeze the brain. The part of your brain that controls movement is the motor cortex up here. It controls two programs that deal with two types of movements, those that are focused on goals and those that are automatic. It's like learning to drive a car. Do you remember how difficult it was at the start to remember everything? Steer the wheel, press the accelerator, change the gear. But now, do you even think about it? No, your brain is an autopilot. When I picked up this tennis racket, my brain switched on the program responsible for goal-focused movements. It received a ton of information about where to put my hands and where to put my feet. But let's say instead we gave this racket to Venus Williams. Because she has done this movement thousands of times, her brain no longer needs all of that information. Instead, it just switches on the autopilot program, meaning that she could effortlessly continue this presentation while slamming the ball into the back of the room, probably breaking your nose there. Sorry. But what does this have to do with freezing in Parkinson's disease? Well, the brain can sometimes act like a computer, with one program frozen and the other one working. In Parkinson's disease, the part of the brain that starts to break down is that responsible for automatic movements, like walking. What the psychologists discovered was that if they put a line on the ground or rolled a ball in front of the person who was frozen, they would be able to start walking again. Why? Because the ball or the line act as a visual goal for the brain. It's essentially like pressing Control-Alt-Delete on your computer. It tells the brain to ignore the frozen autopilot program and to switch back on the program for goal-focused movements, meaning the person can again start to walk. And it's research like this that shows that by examining the complex networks of the human brain, we can, for example, develop new treatments to treat those symptoms of Parkinson's disease that don't respond to medication. And that's because the brain is rather like a game of doubles tennis. You always have one player on the back line ready to jump in if the player at the net misses their shot. Thank you.
It's a fascinating thing because we see, especially someone with Parkinson's, you see them and you assume it must be a physical problem. It must be a problem with muscles or nerve control or something like that. But what you described does sound very simple, right? And I'm sure the brain's a little bit more complicated than that. So how does this work all of the time? What are the subtleties involved in when this works and whether?
So freezing is just a symptom of Parkinson's disease, and there's a wide range of symptoms that can happen. So the most common that we know of is the tremor, for example. So this happens to about 50% of people with Parkinson's disease. And of course, putting a line on the ground is not going to cure Parkinson's disease. It just allows someone to get over that freezing episode or to get over the shuffling gait that also occurs. So it really is activating a different network of the brain. So it brings into play a different part of the brain. So your prefrontal cortex is the part mostly involved with attention and all those movements. When you're initially learning a skill, you have to bring your frontal cortex into play. And that seems to be if you activate that, it then activates a different network of the motor part of your brain. So for example, there's been studies showing that what these lines can do is more heavily activate the premotor cortex, which is involved in planning movements. So people are making better anticipatory movements to walk. So when we start walking, we don't just start. Our muscles have made all these anticipatory movements at the start based on our premotor cortex. And what the line is doing is activating the frontal cortex, which then activates the premotor cortex, which then allows us to make those movements. So it is two different pathways, and it's just kind of using a different network to get to the same ultimate motion.
This seems perfect for virtual specs, augmented reality specs, where the line is just put on your reality and you can wear them all day.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, particularly with technology now, there's a huge amount of new innovative ways to do this. So you can find quite old videos on YouTube of things like literally a line of tape put on the ground in front of somebody where they're likely to freeze. So it often happens in confined spaces, like in a doorway or something. But now there are things like walking sticks that have a little laser pointer coming out of them, or shoes if you're not using a walking stick. Or you can also do this with auditory cues as well, because it's anything that's cueing forward motion. So you can have a metronome or a beat as well to use it. So there's great new innovations.
Or a Quentin Cooper lurking behind you on stage. That you're in 2 minutes.
I am available, sorry, but please smash your four hands together for our Famelab 2017 Ireland winner, Deirdre Robertson. And Deirdre, you did ask me about an anagram, so Deirdre Robertson, terror on bedside. Now that brings us to and by the way, I'd mentioned about the hurling, so if you'd seen the Irish version of that talk, where it was tennis, it was hurling, where it was Wimbledon, it was Croke Park, I think, yes, so brilliantly translated. Right, so that brings us to the halfway point in this tremi-final, which means halfway in all three of the tremi-finals, so it's downhill from here. Our sixth tremi-finalist is from only a smidge further afield than Ireland. That's the Netherlands. Well, actually, Roberto Narcisi, clues in the name, is from quite a bit further afield. He's Italian, but he won Famelab Netherlands 2017. Netherlands is getting to be as bad as Switzerland. Having done his PhD in biotechnology at the University of Genoa, Roberto's now a senior scientist at the Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam. He's co-authored some 20 medical papers. My particular favorite is dynamic regulation of twist-one expression during chronogenic differentiation of human bone marrow-derived mesenchymal stem cells, but I'm not sure how strongly it will feature in the next 3 minutes. From Italy, but here is the Netherlands Famelab champion. Give a big Cheltenham welcome to Roberto Narcisi.
We have all had at least one moment in our lives when a big change happened. Something that twisted our way to see and feel the world around us. A moment in which we made such an important decision that from that day, nothing was the same again. And we felt really good. Well, I can tell you, special cells in our body are making this decision now. I'm talking about stem cells. Stem cells are something incredible. They are amazing cells we all have, and they are there, waiting to do their best, change their lives and reinvent themselves to become something else. This is exactly what's happened during the regeneration of our tissues, like our bones or our skin. However, not all stem cells are the same, and like us, they have their own preference for what they want to be when they grow up. So what I'm studying are the characteristics a stem cell needs to have to preferably become a cell of one specific tissue. It's a very important tissue that allows us to move freely and smoothly. It's a tissue that, when damaged, causes chronic pain. And we are talking about hundreds of millions of people in the world. This tissue is called cartilage. And what I'm doing is finding the best stem cell I can use to repair cartilage when it's damaged. Now, how can I select the best stem cell for cartilage? Well, normally scientists select stem cells by looking for certain characteristics on the surface of the cells. However, never judge a book by its cover. So imagine these are 2 stem cells. So what I found is that sometimes they have identical surfaces, but a very, very different content. And now, with the technology available, I can mark and select stem cell for the content I want, indicative for the presence of one specific factor that I found to be crucial to regulate the twist of a stem cell into a cartilage cell. And guess what? The name of this factor is twist. The best way I can describe you the magic here is that stem cells that have a lot of twist are also the best at making cartilage. So stem cells every day are working really hard, making important decisions to keep our tissues functional and active. And I promise you this happened at least one time to all of us in the last 3 minutes. That's why I think it's incredibly important to know all the little secrets of these decision-making processes, to be able to master them, treat our diseases, and make us feel good again. Thank you.
Why is there then so much controversy over stem cells in the world?
Yeah.
If they're so good, I mean, really.
Yeah. There is a lot of controversy because of, I think, the lack of knowledge. Because it's difficult probably to transmit which is the real potential of these cells on one side. But on the other side, there is a lot of disinformation and misinformation. So unfortunately, there are a lot of people that try to speculate on the top of that. And I can give you some example in which, for example, people were treated with stem cells using by some kind of protocol that were not approved, and all failed. So, and these feed the negative reputation around them. But they are really, really great. But we have really, we need to understand what is real potential. They are not magical. They cannot do wherever we want. But they have a great potential to treat important disease that affect a lot of people in the world.
And let me get this right. The stem cells themselves have a factor. There's no way we can only discover the factor rather than stimulate its development?
Absolutely. I'm actually actively working on ways in which I can stimulate the expression of this famous twist that I found to be so crucial and incredible. And this new technology I'm working on, it's really, really incredible and really nice because I can enter into the cells without influence the behavior of the cells and make that cell light up, basically. In this way, I can see the cells, and I can take that cells and tell, okay, now you go to make some new cartilage. You are the right one. So it's really fascinating.
Great question.
Okay, sorry to stem you when you're in full flow, but making it look easy, Roberto Narcisi.
Thank you.
And Roberto Narcisi, anagram of brains or erotic. Definitely brains, at least as far as I'm concerned, anyway. And also, we've had honey followed by bees, and then we had tennis racket followed by tennis balls. We're getting some definite quantum entanglement going on up here. Now, as I think I mentioned, Roberto is from Italy, but won the Famelab Netherlands. Giulia Melchiori, also from Italy, well, actually Sardinia, which is an Italian island, and she is our actual Italian champion. Giulia is a physical chemistry student at the University of Pisa. She says she's passionate about the methodology, fundamentals, and didactics of science. Well, aren't we all? One of Giulia's very favorite research areas is the most effective way to communicate scientific topics. So no surprise she's got involved with Famelab, and maybe no surprise she came out on top in the Italian final. So far, it's been easy peasy, but can she go all the way to the international final tomorrow and become our winner from Sardinia? Only time will tell, and 3 key minutes of it are coming up now for our Italian champion, Giulia Melchiori.
So, our actions are driven by the wish to get some benefits. Even when we think our actions are reasonless, there is always a reason. Acting in that way makes us gain something. Wait, this is also the way chemical reactions work. Every time we observe a chemical transformation, molecules involved benefit from it. But in that case, the benefit is not in gaining something. It is in losing something, energy. The reason why a transformation occurs can always be found in a push. We can say the same push which makes electricity flow through the wires, or which makes objects fall when lifted and left, or which makes the air escape from the balloon as soon as it can, if they have the chance to do it, the opportunity to reduce their energy. Atoms which decide to bond do it gladly. When they move close, situation between them easily became hot. And when I say hot, I mean the heat was released. When attraction leads to a bond, energy is always released in the form of heat. And the more heat is released, the stronger the bond, the more stable the molecule feels. This has important consequences for us. Some good ones, some others less good. Thousands of atoms inside our body feel stable when they bond to form long chains such as proteins. But proteins don't perform their tasks as elongated chains. Most of them fold to reach a special shape. Why? Well, because in this way, atoms which are far from each other in the chain can get closer, bond, and release energy, making the protein feel more stable. Here, maybe the most important protein for us, hemoglobin, made up of 4 chains folded this way, which in the lungs feel quite stable when they bond the oxygen we breathe. But if around there is another gas, carbon monoxide, well, hemoglobin will prefer it to the oxygen, because this bond lowers the energy and makes the protein and the gas feel more stable. Well, usually the one who is hurt the most in this situation, it is not the oxygen, it is us. We can die of suffering. So nobody does anything for nothing. I don't know if this is true for human beings, but it certainly is for atoms and molecules. Thank you.
Julia, that was quite ambitious to start with chemistry and end up with a lovely little folded protein.
Yeah.
So yes, by the end you'd got to tell us that a kind of energy minimization is why carbon monoxide is so dangerous. Presumably things like cyanide as well, they form such incredibly strong bonds so easily. That's why cyanide kills you, basically, presumably.
Bond forms, every time a bond is formed, it's because the electrons around the nucleus of atoms, atoms are made of a nucleus, positive nucleus, and electrons, which are negatives. And the electrons are the glow which make the atoms together when a bond forms. And the reason why a bond is more stable than another is just in the way electrons dispose in the space to maximize the attraction and minimize the repulsion. So high energy situation characterized of an high level of energy when the repulsion is higher than attraction. So in this case, carbon monoxide can use this electron in a most effective way than oxygen. The site of the chain where the molecules bond is actually an iron atom. So the sharing of electrons between iron and the molecule is more effective because maximize attraction by comparison with the repulsion. So this is stronger, and this has not good consequences for us.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I think that's perfect timing. She's got a lot of bottle. Our Italian champion, Giulia Melchiori. Very nice demo. Moving on nearly 7,000 miles to be here, we have Ha Mi from Hanoi, or more formally our Famelab winner from Vietnam, Ha Mi Pham. After getting a BSc in biotechnology and pharmacology, Ha Mi is now a research assistant at the Oxford University Clinical Research Unit in Hanoi. Her focus is flu, both in birds and in people, and in that rather nasty group of infectious diseases called or infectious agents, I should say, called flaviviruses, which includes Zika, dengue, yellow fever, and a couple of others as well. Now, we're not trying to prevent or cure global health threats. Ha Mi likes painting and loves taking any opportunity she can to share her research with the wider world. She's got all sorts of science communication prizes and awards, but it'll be hard to top winning Famelab Vietnam, unless, of course, she wins Famelab International. From Hanoi, Vietnam, it's Ha Mi Pham.
Ow! The mosquitoes again, drinking my blood without asking. You know, sometimes I wonder, humans are so good at making things so go extinct, so why not mosquitoes? Obviously, killing the mosquito is the best protection against diseases, right? Miss Chung, a fisherwoman on Chi Nguyen Island in Vietnam, also thought that. But what she and her neighbor are doing right now is growing and releasing more mosquitoes in the community to eliminate dengue and Zika virus. Oh my God, can you believe that? More mosquitoes in the world? Okay, calm down, because let me explain. Those mosquitoes are not normal, you know. They carry inside a bacteria named Wolbachia. And under the microscope, they had a shape of the popcorn. So the scientists also call it popcorn bacteria. The popcorn bacteria live inside the mosquito cells, and they can inhibit the growth of the dengue and Zika virus. So the mosquito cannot transmit the disease anymore. The popcorn bacteria can be passed on from generation to generation through mosquito eggs. So the more mosquito carry popcorn bacteria, the more people can be protected. That sounds amazing, right? But at the beginning, it's not easy to convince 3,000 people on Chi Nguyen Island believe on it. And Ms. Chung said that their biggest concern is that bacteria safe for human health? And I could say that, yes, totally yes. Because the popcorn bacteria were first discovered in 1924, and it is the natural bacteria, have present up to 60% of the insect worldwide, like butterfly have it, dragonfly, bee, and some kinds of mosquitoes. However, they do not have inside the mosquito that carry dengue and Zika virus. So the scientists need to collect the mosquito eggs from Chi Nguyen and then bring those back to the laboratory. Okay, I have some mosquito egg in my hand now. Okay, I can zoom it out. The mosquito eggs also like straight and have a thin layer like the balloons. So the scientists will use the tiny needles like this to insert the bacteria inside the egg. Oh my God. All the eggs burst, and the scientists need to repeat the experiment 1,000 times before they were successful. And after 2 years, release the mosquito-carrying bacteria on Chi Nguyen. You know, since 2015, there is no case of dengue fever on Chi Nguyen Island, and people are now 100% believe on science. And Miss Chung said that now when she get bored, she just like sit down and let the mosquito bite her, because after that, she feel itchy instead of sad. And along Vietnam, like we have Australia, Brazil, Colombia, and also Indonesia, apply this bomb-missing method. And I hope that maybe in the future, some of you have some mosquito, have bacteria at home like a fairy pet. And we also think that say no to mosquito-borne diseases. Thank you.
So I've actually been out in Brazil releasing mosquitoes for dengue fever, not quite on this thing, but similar principle. And my question is about the ethics of doing it, because you often do this in areas which are very poor, they don't have very good science education, and you want the population to make an informed decision. So how much what's the responsibility of the scientist here in how much science do you have to teach them before they know enough to decide whether they want your mosquitoes to be
Yes,
released?
actually on Jung Hwan Island, it is the island not too far from the mainland. It have like around 3,000 people. And before this project start, a lot of scientists and a lot of like the science communicators need to go to that island and then try to convince people. They go to each household and explain how the bacteria work inside the mosquito and explain that it cannot live in the hot blood body and it's totally safe for human. And yeah, and Miss Chung Miss Chung, yeah. This woman, she is one of, she is like among the first person like agree to like support to this project.
So how do you scale that up then? So you've got, it took you, years to convince 3,000 people to let the mosquitoes go. Then maybe you go to the mainland. How, you can't go house to house. So how do you scale up this technology, this idea?
Yeah, actually now, because this project is very successful on Jung Hwan Island, and now it's start moving to the mainland. And the scientists like invite some people on Jung Hwan to the mainland and like share their feelings, their experience. Like they get the mosquito. It's not like more itchy than normal mosquito, and yeah. There's no dengue fever cases on the island right now, and they feel like very relaxed and comfortable.
How do you know if a mosquito that's biting you is with the virus or without? In other words, carrying or not carrying the dengue fever or any of the other borne diseases?
Actually,
I mean,
yeah.
how do you kill or not kill one?
Very briefly.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
Actually, we will kill it for sure, right? Yeah, but after releasing the mosquito that carrying popcorn bacteria, the scientists like correct randomly at many points on the island, and they will check if those mosquitoes carry the popcorn bacteria or not, and they will do
Not briefly enough. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop in there and say entertainment and popcorn from Harmy Fam.
Thank you.
Now, I did say there'd been a bit of strange quantum entanglement in this Tremi-final, and we've had a couple of things that have related. Now we go from one person who's been talking about, amongst other things, mosquitoes and malaria, to somebody who researches mosquitoes and malaria. Our Famelab Uganda champion 2017, Irene Jumanji, is a research analyst in the Kampala office of Global Health Organization Population Services International. Now, that might seem very specialist, but Irene says she's a big fan of combining knowledge from different areas of science in order to understand and find creative solutions to major problems like tackling infectious diseases. She's also a big fan of sharing her research and her challenges with as many people as possible. Hence entering Famelab Uganda, hence winning, and hence her 8,000-mile round trip to be here in Cheltenham. Time to have a gander at our Uganda champion, Irene Jumanji.
I enjoy superhero movies, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. But I don't have to go so far in my imagination or even travel to Hollywood to have an action-packed, thrilling experience of heroic proportions. It's happening right here, right now, in each and every one of us. Every day, we encounter millions of alien particles, which, if given half a chance, could cause serious damage to our bodies. But millions of years of evolution have equipped us with a sophisticated army of superheroes who defend and protect us every second of every day. What am I talking about? Our immune systems, your skin, the acid in your stomach, the saliva in your mouth, the mucus and the hairs that line your airways. These are all physical barriers that prevent alien particles from entering our bodies in the first place. This is your first-line defense system, your border patrol. But if you happen to injure your physical protections, or you're dealing with an alien particle that is particularly clever at slipping through your border, you have your second-line defense system. And this is made up of immune cells, or white blood cells, and the proteins that they produce. Now, these guys are aggressive. They shoot first, ask questions later. They have the ability to eat up and completely break down alien particles. Your second-line immune cells are also very noisy. They send signals to different parts of your body, alerting your cells of what is happening. And this is why when you cut through your skin, you get redness or swelling. Or if you have an infection, you get a fever or a headache. Now, some of the signals that your second-line immune cells send go to your third-line defense system. And this is made up of a group of very highly specialized immune cells. These guys are vigorously trained. They have advanced weaponry, and they are lethal. Your third-line immune cells attack alien particles in a very specific, very strategic manner. This is your SWAT team, your SEAL Team 6. So, if you're dealing with an alien particle that has infiltrated your first and your second-line defense systems, you have a third-line defense system that is ready to act. Again, we encounter millions of alien particles every day, but the ones that actually cause you disease are ones that are able to bypass, to overcome, or to overwhelm your immune system. So sit back, relax, enjoy the fact that you have your own private army of superheroes who defend and protect you every second of every day. Thank you.
Irene, thank you, especially for giving us heads up on the rashes and the symptoms of immune system kicking in. How do we teach moms to not worry about fever when it is natural?
Well, you just educate people. I think the biggest thing that we can do is, and the reason why this competition is so important is it gives a platform for scientists to explain what is happening. So if people have the knowledge and have like a basic understanding of how the immune system works and what they can expect, if you open those lines of communication, I think then people will become less worried. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a big, very big issue.
Yeah.
And what happens after the third line of defense?
Well, then you're in trouble. But we do have drugs. We do have drugs that, I mean, a lot of diseases have medication which is supposed to help you. In other cases, we have things like vaccines which help your immune system get better and learn better, like we heard earlier this morning. So there are ways we can help our immune system act better. But your third line defense system is really the epitome of your immune response.
So how come it isn't the other way around? The third line of defense isn't the first line in the first place.
Because
Why?
you don't want to waste energy. It's very expensive to have the later responses. So if it can be taken care of by your first line defense or your second line defense, then your body prefers that because it's less expensive to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
You've got time for one more?
Well, if you're a malaria expert, the last talk we heard was about viruses, Zika viruses. So presumably malaria would need a completely different mechanism from these little popcorn molecules trying to disrupt it.
Malaria is not caused by a virus, it's caused by a parasite.
Yeah.
And it has a very complex life cycle. It's a very complicated disease. So it's very challenging to come up with methods of helping our immune system fight it better. So it's very complicated. It's not like viruses. You can't really modify it that way.
Okay, our Wonder Woman winner from Uganda, Irene Jumanji. And I know we've got an international audience, so just in case anyone's wondering, I introduced Irene by saying time to have a gander at our Uganda champion. Gander as in goose, geese having long necks. Long necks were meant to be able to look at things easily, hence the old British phrase, have a gander. Just thought I'd clear that up. And finally, remember the order is random, so although last could be best, it's statistically unlikely. And the last name on our checklist is our Czech champ, Teresa Mashinova. Based at the Microbial Institute of the Czech Academy of Sciences, Teresa's a fun girl who likes fungi. She spends her time with them at work, where she's exploring the important ecological functions they fulfill, and also on her days off, where she organises and leads biology-themed summer camps from secondary school students. Generally, Teresa tries to be outdoors with nature as much as possible. She enjoys walking, skiing, and cycling, but she says when she's indoors, her favourite hobby is dancing, and that she's an excellent tap dancer. She's indoors now, so give a soft shoe shuffle of applause to our Czech winner with a Prague spring in her step, Teresa Mashinova.
Oh, hello everybody. Do we know each other? Let me introduce myself. I am Prochlorococcus, unicellular cyanobacteria and an important part of the marine phytoplankton. I belong to the smallest photosynthetic organisms. You just caught me doing what I'm best known for, photosynthesis and its associated oxygen production. We members of the Prochlorococcus family produce about 20% of all the oxygen that is released on Earth during photosynthesis. Okay, tropical rainforests produce twice as much as we do, but you have to take into account that unlike rainforests, you cannot see us with the naked eye. This makes our achievement even more remarkable, am I right? You might be wondering, how is it possible that something so small is so important? The answer is simple. There are quite a lot of us, about 10 to the power of 27. Yes, we are the most numerous species on Earth. On Earth. Sorry, I just totally forgot. You might be wondering, how is it possible that something so small is so important? The answer is simple. There are quite a lot of us. I know what you are thinking. How do we do it? First, we live in tropical and subtropical waters of world oceans. These waters are known for their low nutrient content, and thus, other species can't survive here. Therefore, there is a very little competition. 2. Low nutrient content does not matter to us. Our minuteness actually gives us a clear advantage in receiving nutrients. We small spheres, unlike the big spheres, have a large surface-to-volume ratio, and therefore, this little amount of nutrient easily permeates into us. 3. We double in number every day. At such speed, by the end of this month, I would have more than 1 billion descendants. Half of us are lost along the way to thankless predators, but we are still the most numerous species on Earth. So remember, the fact that you cannot see us doesn't mean that we are not essential to you. Do you know that every breath you take contains oxygen that was produced by me? Thank you.
Hi, Teresa. So, yes, we've got these little plankton, which don't seem to worry about low nutrients, but there is a big danger to these plankton still, isn't there, which is ocean acidification. If the ocean becomes more acidic, how does that affect how these plankton work?
Well, actually, there is a big research going about it, because, as I have said, I have a global importance for the global ecosystems. And acidification, the same as the global warming, will probably highly affect my distribution. I actually don't know how exactly the acidification will affect my distribution, but I can tell you that, for example, global warming will definitely increase my abundance in the environment. That the number of me will increase about 10 to 15%.
Which is a good thing for making
yes, of course.
I think that is tempered by the acidification issue, making it less effective, isn't it? So these things are so incredibly abundant, and kind of always have been, haven't they? Have they actually formed kind of structures like rock layers and that kind of thing, I believe?
No, they are just floating there. And actually, one thing that I forgot to say is that we occupy the same volume here on Earth as you, the human race. So they are just floating at the top 200 meters of tropical and subtropical waters.
Okay.
And do you live all over the world? Like, do you live, what's your distribution across the planet?
Well,
like,
I live all over the planet in tropical and subtropical waters. So I'm like almost everywhere except for the polar regions.
Where there's less sun quite a lot of the
No,
time.
there is a lot of nutrients, so I'm outcompeted by the others.
Okay, sharing her air and her ideas with us, please thank Teresa Mashinova. And I like the way Teresa stayed in character even when she was answering the questions as well. Now, we have an old saying in science communication, if it ain't over till it's Teresa Mashinova, but it is over now that she was our last Tremi finalist in this Tremi final. I think individually and collectively and communicatively, they have all done a Famelabulous job. So can we give all 10 of them, please, a huge ovation, a multi-nation ovation. And after that touching moment of unity, it is time for our judges to trash all that, to divide them, to separate them into 3 finalists and 7, for want of a better word, losers. No, people who haven't quite made the final as well. So judges, go be decisive, incisive, but preferably not derisive, and be quick about it. You have 10 minutes. We need 3 equal choices. Can we send our judges on their way, please, with some encouragement for Lubov Kostova, Mark Looney, Helen Chersky. That's great. There's a slightly kind of about to put the black cap on look to them here. It's your grave duty. And just before we find out their moment, we'll just remind ourselves, we haven't got room for them all on the stage, but can we again, one more time, thank all these people, all the way from Korea, Jung Hwan Mok, winner of our first Mauritian competition, Roshni Rajkumar, from Oz, Just Because, Nural Chokchetin, Swiss Whiz, Katerina Sizarova, Irish with a flourish, Deirdre Robertson, Italian but here from the Netherlands, if that's not double Dutch, Roberto Narcisi, Italian champion Giulia Melchiori, Ha Mi Pham from Vietnam, the Uganda bonanza that is Irene Jumanji, and Czech champ Teresa Mashinova. They have all been brilliant. That is, however, the last moment where we'll be able to treat them all as being 10 identical Famelabbers, because 3 of them and 3 only are also going to be international Famelab finalists. Judges?
Yes.
Dead easy. No trouble at all.
Right. We did have each our highlights, didn't we? So, I mean, it was really nice, I thought. The fact that there were 2 B stories, one after another, which were both very interested in their way. So in Switzerland, I thought Katerina responded very well to the questions, because they are very interesting. And our honey expert, it was lovely to see someone who was a genuine expert in a very niche but very nice area of science. That was beautiful to see that expertise kind of brought on stage. And I love their little prop, you know, the poo tube. I could just see her getting that out at airport security and having to explain exactly what is that. Other highlights of mine, I liked Roberto from the Netherlands, the Italian from the Netherlands. I thought he's got a great voice. I could listen to that voice doing voiceovers all day. A lovely pace and a good command of his subject. And then, yeah, Irene from Uganda. I just loved her poise and her demeanour. I could just kind of trust everything you say.
Just to be clear, that was poise and demeanour, not poison demeanour.
Demeanour, yeah. So, yeah, I think just the level of delivery, especially with some of the presenters, you just ask yourself, could I listen to that for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, for an hour? And with some of these presenters, it would be a pleasure just to listen to whatever they were talking about.
Well said. Anyone else got any highlights they want to pick up before we start scything?
Just before I go into a couple of highlights, just to let you know that you're all, it doesn't really matter who the 3 are, the 6, the 10, at the end of tomorrow's show. It's just a show, because I know Famelabbers across the world are making such a huge difference, and I really, really know it. And you're all absolute winners for the actual reasons that you're here, because you wanted to speak up for science. And we saw a lot of incredible acts today. We had fantastic props. And Julia, I thought your props were so beautiful and simple to use, and honestly would love to see more of those. And that box that you produced was fantastic. I thought that Deirdre had such a wonderful storytelling. She grabbed our attention as soon as she came out with her tennis racket and told us a very important story, as some of us approach the age when Parkinson's may be an issue. It is really nice to know that there are markers along the way. And I was thinking all the time while I was listening to Roshni, I really wished that my teachers at school would start with imagine. Imagine, and take you off on a journey to know the world better.
Helen, anything to add?
Yeah, so my highlight, I like in the first talk, Jung Hwan, the chicken on the shoulder. There should be more chickens on the shoulder. I like the idea. It's still, bring them, a little companion in life. I like that.
I think pirates may have kind of cornered that market as well.
Well, the scientists are going to have chickens from now on. I think that should be a thing. Anyone who's paying attention, let's get rid of that awful white lab coat rubbish and just all go around with a
out with the white coat, out with the lab coats, in with the chickens. That's a great motto, right? Yeah, fine.
And I liked Ha Mai from Vietnam. There was something nice in there because you told us why it was hard. Because those of us who are scientists who spend our lives doing experiments, it doesn't work, and no one ever wants to hear about why it didn't work. And I think it's really important that this is part of the story, that people struggle to find these things out. And so I thought including that was really nice. And then at the end, Teresa from the Czech Republic, it's sometimes nice to be a marine piece of plankton in the first person. I like, it's a great way of telling a story. We assume that our perspective is the only one that is, and why not view the world from the point of view, so it has to have some humility. So I really like that sort of first person looking out at the world rather than us looking in. So yeah, there was some great stuff there.
The judges have done a very clever thing. They've liked everybody. But there has to be a tricky point now where, but tragically, you cannot bend the rules. You cannot send through more than 3. Whatever you think, however close they are, it's all very well saying, in a sense, they're all winners, because tragically, 70% of them are not going to be.
Yeah. We did have an easier time than perhaps some panels did, because at least 2 of us really liked 3, if you like. So there were 3 people that we thought we were really happy to send through. So would
Hopefully
you like to know
send
what
through
they are?
3 people through. Yeah.
What would you? What would
They're
you
all
like
equal
to know?
names. It's impossible to read them all out at once unless you all blurt and say one name at the same time.
I'll
Nobody will
just
understand.
read
So
them
a
very
sequence.
quickly then. We will send through Roshni from Mauritius.
Come on up, Roshni. Well done.
Nural from Australia.
Woo! Interestingly, first semi-final, 2 women were the first 2 of the 3 picked as well. I don't know if that means anything about the third, but it's an interesting pattern.
Full house. Irene from Uganda.
Hey! I'm glad I got in there with that observation before it was trashed by the final one. So that was it. Yeah, exactly. You can do a random screen. Do you want to do one more random screen? That was good. That's Siama, who'll be in the next semi-final. I recognise that screaming. Okay, look, congratulations, commiserations to the other 7. It really is a very difficult decision, and it's very hard to do. And no matter what Mark says, however much they agreed, it must have been very, very, very close indeed. So first of all, can we also thank our judges for the very hard job they've done?